listening to Quality and Clarity Radio.
What is going on, lovely people of South Africa and the rest of the world listening? I go by the name of Tumisho, and you are tuned into Quality and Clarity Radio. Now, firstly, I would like to apologize for, the recent inconsistency with episode releases, which actually, brings me into today's topic. And I just want to talk about fear, and how fear can affect you as an artist, So, about 2 to 3 weeks ago, I recorded what could have potentially been episode 3 of season 1. But unfortunately, as I was listening to it, producing it, mastering it, editing everything, getting everything ready to submit and release, I started to feel like, this episode lacks direction, it lacks foundation, it's just a mess. There's no substance. So, and it took me 14 tries to record, and I just realized I was going in circles and I was disappointed and more than ever overwhelmed. So I did what any other artist would do, and I took a break from nearly everything. So I think about a week ago I recorded, because I couldn't record 2 weeks ago because I was sick. So and a week ago I decided to try and record, and then the outcome was even worse than the first time, and it felt more overwhelming, and it felt like everything was just crashing down, everything was going downhill with the series. And I just felt like, I started to question if this podcast really has a future. But I had to learn a few things. I had to understand that art is definitely a process. Art is a process, and it's not going to be perfect for the first few tries, So I had to stop beating myself up. I had to stop, blaming myself so much, because, to be honest, I don't like to create with labels. So I wouldn't really say I'm a podcast host, but I don't want that to limit me. And I don't want that to be an excuse for not being the best at whatever I want to do. But I had to understand that, I'm not a professional at this. I'm still learning. I'm still finding my wings. So, of course, it's not going to be perfect. And that's okay. It's okay for everything to be a work in progress, because, you're going to get somewhere one day, but you're not going to get there on the first day. And I learned a few points, but before we dive into those points, I just want to, let you understand as a listener that it's okay to be stuck in a circle of fear, and you feel like you're just drowning in all this fear of actually letting your work be seen by the world. It's okay to fear that, but it's not okay once you start letting that fear dictate your development as an artist. It's not okay for you to dictate, for you to let that fear dictate the production of your art. And it's not okay for you to let your fear just control the overall, spectrum of the direction that your art takes, And I actually read a quote earlier today that everybody wants to start something, but no one wants to be seen starting from the bottom. Don't be part of that, everybody, because truth be told, everybody starts from the bottom. Everybody starts from scratch. No matter what type of advantage you have, you'll start with whatever you have. There's going to be a start, and there's going to be a middle. And depending on how good you are at what you do, depending on how consistent or how, valuable you let your work be, there might be no end. But that's not the point. My point is that it's okay to start from the bottom, because we all start from the bottom, And it's not going to be perfect at the start. It's going to be far from perfect, in fact. I don't know if I've mentioned on this podcast before, but Quality and Clarity actually started with my mom giving me a secondhand laptop. This laptop was like a Windows 7 laptop, which was released in 2014. Now, anybody who knows that, laptops, bro, the world of laptops has advanced a lot since 2014. So I needed like an advanced laptop that can handle the software I was using. But did I let that stop me? No. I made no excuses and I just found alternatives and I made a plan. And having a new laptop now, it's way easier to make what I do. But at first, I didn't have that advantage, but I didn't let it stop me. I didn't let it dictate the quality of my work. I had to come to an understanding that there's no time to be making excuses, you know. And this leads me to my first point, I guess, which is, just do it. I don't even want to sound like, cliche and sound like, yeah, Nike, whatever. Just do it. But the point is just to do it. Go in head first. Like, dive into whatever you want to do. Literally dive in. Don't hold on to the fear. Don't hold on to the, overthinking. Just dive in and do your best. Rick Rubin once said this in an interview that if you tried your best, what more is there you can do? If you tried your best and you failed, that's not your fault. You tried whatever you could and it didn't work out. That's just the universe telling you, okay, this is not for you. But it doesn't mean that you're not good at what you do. It just means that you need to find out what you're good at. It doesn't mean that you're not good at something out there. Because truth is, if you don't seek what you're good at, you miss all the shots you don't take. If you don't seek opportunities, you miss all the shots you don't take, And the best time to start with anything is yesterday. The best time to start is yesterday. Because the more time you waste, the more advantage you give to the next person. And you want to be number one. And number one has to start early. Number one has to give themselves an advantage. I was reading about a 2-time Olympic gold medalist who goes by the name of Eliud Kipchoge. He holds, I think, the world record for fastest marathon, which was, I think, the Berlin Marathon. And he said in a Nike interview that the best time to plant a tree was 15 years ago. And I want you to sit on that thought. Understand that the best time to plant a tree was 15 years ago. Now, what does this mean? The best time to start is today. The best time to start is yesterday. Because making it a tomorrow problem, you're delaying your development. Truth be told, you're delaying your development. But let me just dive into 4 points that I seem to find, which the first point is actually accept that failure is a part of growth. So your fear of failure is what's gonna delay your development and your success. And to avoid this, you need to accept that failure is part of growth. Failing is part of the process. It doesn't mean that it's gonna, destroy everything. Even though failure is part of the process and it might slow down the progress, it doesn't mean that it messes up the entire process. Because you might find that your success was actually directed by your failure. So my second point is try new ideas and expect some of them to fail. Now, as human beings, we're not perfect. You need to understand that, especially as an artist, there will be times where your art doesn't sell, or your art doesn't appeal to your market, your art doesn't appeal to your demographic, and that's okay, because you're not perfect. And most importantly, your art is not perfect. Whether you're making clothes, whether you make music, you're a photographer, you're a writer, you're a model, whatever the case is, your art will not always be perfect. Your art will not always be appealing, and your art will not always attract your demographic. It will not always attract your market. It will not always attract the people you want it to be directed to, and that's okay. But most importantly, the point is that you have to try new ideas. And I want us to focus on the first part of that sentence or that phrase. Try. It's like, bro, you can never beat yourself up for trying. Because one thing I can tell you, again, you miss all the shots you don't take. So always try new ideas and expect some of them to fail. And when I say expect some of them to fail, I'm not saying be fearful. No, I'm just saying that leave room for disappointment and continue. Keep the boat moving, you know. Which leads me to my third point. Learn from what didn't work and adapt your thinking. This is literally just learning from your mistakes. Learn from what doesn't work. Take notes of what doesn't work and avoid that in future. Adapt your thinking. Expand your spectrum, you know. When you know what doesn't work, that's what speeds up the process. And remember, I don't want us to think about success as a time process. I don't want us to think about it in the context of time frames. You need to understand that even though it's a process, whether slow or fast, if you're bound to get where you're going, you will get there one day or another, slow or fast, you know. And when I say learn from what didn't work and adapt your thinking, once you fail, you have, an advantage. Failing will give you that advantage. You need to have that mentality that failing will teach you what doesn't work so that you can avoid it in future. Which actually brings me back to my first point, which is accept that failure is part of growth. You need to fail to succeed, because you can't succeed without knowing how not to fail. Which brings me to my final point, which is instead of giving up or not trying, figure out what works. So I want us to go back to the reason behind the topic I chose today, which was, I recorded multiple times. I think in total I have 23 drafts of what didn't work for what could have been episode 3. And instead of giving up or not trying, I just had to figure out what doesn't work. I feel like episode 3, I didn't plan it correctly. There was no topic that I could really sit on and analyze and understand the core belief behind it for me to speak about it. And I think now that I've failed enough with recording episode 3, that's what I can speak about: failure and fear of failing, or rather fear of not succeeding, And to get used to this, I don't want to say to get used to failure or anything like that, but to get used to understanding that failure is part of growth, failure is part of the process, I have another 4 points, right? I don't want to make this episode too long, but yeah. So the other 4 points is that this is just more from a advice perspective, which I want to start the first point by saying release work that isn't perfect. So as I'm recording this right now on a Tuesday night, it's like nearly midnight right now, and I know that this episode is not my best episode so far, might not be my best episode ever, but with understanding that it isn't perfect, I think it's going to bring me peace that, even though it's not perfect, it's still going to have an important message that someone can learn from, So you have to get used to releasing work that isn't perfect, because that will make you more comfortable with your surroundings. Because remember, to grow, you need to be out of your comfort zone, right? But once you're out of your comfort zone, there has to be a point where you reach that level of understanding complexity and understanding that within this complexity, I can still find a straight line. I can still find my roots. I can still find my wings. I can still find my feet, even though you're in an uncomfortable situation, right? When you release work that isn't perfect in an uncomfortable situation, or rather in an uncomfortable bubble, you get comfortable quicker. That's the point. You have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. Once you're in those uncomfortable situations and you manage to become comfortable, you grow. Then you put yourself in more uncomfortable situations, and it's a constant repetition of being uncomfortable and finding ways to become comfortable. And then what? You become less fearful of losing. Then that fear fades away, which leads me to my second point. Don't be afraid to leave small blemishes in your art, because as I said in the first 4 points, art is not perfect. Art will not always be appealing to your viewers, or rather your audience, let me say. So don't be afraid to leave small blemishes in your art, because that's fear. And fear is what every artist has, but every artist avoids. So you need to understand that not everyone's gonna, rock with what you do, but that's okay. Leading me to my third point. Create new work instead of nitpicking a single piece. And what I mean by nitpicking is constantly, just tweaking out the same thing. You could sit on one discipline within your art and constantly just tweak a few points. That's not going to help you grow as an artist. That's literally what fear is. You're too scared to take a risk. I want to give a kind of like a lame example, which is Playboy Cardi's Whole Lot of Red. Whole Lot of Red dropped 25 September or 25th September rather, 2020. So when it dropped, I can guarantee you 99% of people who listened to it hated the project. They hated the project because we weren't used to hearing Playboy Cardi rapping like that or rapping on beats like that. And it was like, yo, as an artist, why would you do that? Why would you risk so much? But when you look at it in retrospective, look at everybody around Playboy Cardi. They all rap just like him and they found success. Playboy Cardi literally trailblazed with the risk he took. He knew that dropping this album, he could have, put his career down the drain, but that's literally what boosted him by 100. Everybody around him started doing the same thing and they found success within that because he took a risk that everybody saw as, dumb and incompetent, whereas in the long run, that was what led him to consistent, success. And this brings me back to one of my first points, which is instead of giving up or not trying, figure out what works, which is what Cardi did. He realized that he was releasing the same work over and over, so he took a risk. He tried something different, and then with that lack of fear, it worked out in the long run. And my last point of this entire episode is experiment and work in things you aren't comfortable with. It's the only way to grow. This is similar to what I mentioned earlier, whereas I like how I explained it here, because here it actually explains why it's the only way to grow. Because if you aren't comfortable with something, you don't know much about it, you're not familiar with it, so you're probably not good at it. And if you are good at it, then that's a chance for you to realize that there's an opportunity for growth within that space, within that field. So if you experience with what you're not good at, you will find success, because you taking that risk, you increase your chances of a reward. And what I want to leave you with for this episode is fear is the enemy of progress. I want you to write that down. Fear is the enemy of progress. Fear is what is stopping you. Fear is what is keeping you limited. That fear will not get you anywhere. Take that risk, dive in head first, because you know why? You miss all the shots you don't take. So whatever you do, and now I'm not speaking for only artists, whether you're an artist, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a chef, whether you're a doctor, whatever you are, whatever field you are in, stop having a fearful mentality. Stop moving with fear, because that fear is what is holding you back from reaching your full potential. I go by the name of Tumisho. This has been episode 3 of season 1 of Quality and Clarity radio. And if you did enjoy this episode, please Don't be scared to show any support. Share it with friends and family who might need to hear this. Share it with any creative you feel you want to hear this. And I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for listening.